So earlier this year, Wahoo dropped their latest range of GPS head units, the Element Bolt and the Elemnt Roam, both now in their third generation. So I've actually had the chance to test this new Roam 3 for the last 5 months or so now, from day rides to bikepacking trips. And well, in this video, I'm going to share my overall thoughts. All right, let's have some fun. All right, so Wahoo started back in 2009, founded by Chip Hawkins in Atlanta. So their first product was the Ant Plus Key, a small device that allowed iPhones to connect to and track data from ANT or Ant Plus fitness sensors like heart rate straps and cadence sensors. So in 2012, Wahoo made their mark with the launch of the Kicker Smart Trainer, one of the first truly connected indoor trainers. And well, we've seen how that industry has gone. Yeah, I think it was a pretty smart move on their part. A few years later, in 2016, they introduced the original Element computer, built around an app-driven setup and a simple interface. So just a year later came the Bolt, which was a compact so-called Aero head unit with those LED quick look lights that Wahoo quickly became known for. Then in 2019, Wahoo rolled out the larger Element Roam, which was designed around navigation, and that same year, they acquired Speed Play pedals. The Bolt V2 followed in 2021, adding a colored screen, USB-C port, and smart navigation. So the Roam V2 arrived in 2022 with a richer display, dual band GPS, and updated charging port, USB-C as well. So in December of 2024, Wahoo also launched the Element Ace, a new category of bike computer for them, and well, I guess for the market, that kind of blends that smartphone-like usability with the form factor of a dedicated head unit. And it even includes an integrated wind sensor, which is quite unique. So fast forward to earlier this year, and Wahoo gave the Bolt and the Roam a full refresh with modernized design, more storage, brighter displays, longer battery life, and on the Roam right here, a touch screen. So before we get into the differences of the older and newer version, I do want to take a quick moment to let you all know that this video is supported in part by Salsa Cycles. Salsa just launched a whole new lineup of full suspension mountain bikes designed for adventure by bike and built for the love of dirt. From their all-new Spearfish to two Blackthorns, there's something here for almost any rider. So all of these new bikes feature Salsa's efficient split pivot suspension and split pivot plus design approach for adaptable travel. And Salsa's signature cargo capacity makes any of them a good candidate for bikepacking. So for more on these new offerings, you can click on the card in the top right corner here. Also follow the link in the description below. All right, so what is really new here? Well, actually quite a lot. So unlike the jump from the V1 to V2, which mainly added a bit of internal color, more storage, some button tweaks, and the move to USB-C, the Roam 3 feels like a complete overhaul. So first off, the device is noticeably taller, I guess, bigger. It measures 96 by 53 by 24 millimeters. And it also is slightly heavier at 109 grams compared to 94 grams. Overall, it's still smaller than, say, the Hammerhead Karoo or the Garmin Edge 1040 Solar, but it's definitely the thickest head unit that I've used over the past few years. All right, so the Roam 3 keeps the USB-C port with a nice weather cover on the bottom, and then the button setup is actually the same as the V2. 3 buttons that now kind of protrude out maybe a little bit more even. 2 on the right side, and then you have the power button on the left side. So each click gives a really solid kind of tactile click or feedback so that you always know that you've engaged it. And they come with a nice grip allowing for a precise press. So I guess the biggest change is noticeable right away. Wahoo dropped the LED quick look lights. So yeah, they used to line the top and that left side to give you a quick cue for things like power or speed or turning. Some riders absolutely love them. Others didn't really care as much. Personally, I don't mind about the loss here since you can kind of replicate that info on the screen itself. Still, it was one of those features that set Wahoo apart, and I know plenty of people are disappointed to see them go. That all said, removing the LEDs kind of makes a little bit more room for that new 2.8-inch screen to stretch closer to the edges. So the display is now a touch screen as well, and the color depth jumps from just 64 colors on the Roam V2 to 16 million, putting it much closer in terms of vibrancy to the Hammerhead Karoo. So storage also doubled from 32 gigabytes to 64 gigabytes, so more room for maps, workouts, and so on. Sensors were also updated too, and the Roam 3 now includes a speaker for audible turn-by-turn navigation. Not something I personally use, but it is an option. But the built-in digital bell, on the other hand, has actually been, well, I'd say surprisingly useful. Although it is no spur cycle bell, it definitely does the trick when I am on, say, local bike paths. All right, and finally, Wahoo moved away from the use of the older Elemnt app with this new device alongside the launch of the Ace. So all new head units that Wahoo will be releasing will use this Wahoo app. At first, I found it a little annoying, but honestly, I've come to like it. I don't know. It's just simple. It looks good. It works. So more on that soon. All right, so up until now, the Bolt and Roam have basically shared kind of the same UI across the last two generations, with only kind of minor updates here and there. But when I first turned on the Roam 3, which I will admit, it takes too long, 40 seconds to turn on. But I was impressed with the new overall experience. So while many riders loved the simplicity of Wahoo head units before the Ace, Wahoo has made some major changes here. So I think most of them are good, but some of you might not like a few of them. All right, so right from the start, it feels like Wahoo took some notes from Hammerhead with the Karoo. So when you power it up, you're greeted with options like ride profile, routes, workouts, and a quick view of the sensors that you were paired with. So I personally never bothered changing the profiles. The default cycling profile was really all I needed. But if you wanted to, say, differentiate between day rides and bikepacking trips, or training rides and bikepacking trips, or customize different data fields, that's certainly where multiple profiles could be useful. Routes and workouts are straightforward here, and I will get into those routes later in the video. But what I really do like is that the homepage makes it really easy to access, add, or remove sensors without really having to dig around in the menus. So across the top of the screen here, now you have something that shows the time, a phone icon showing if you are paired to your phone, GPS signal kind of indicator showing that GPS is on, and obviously on the far right, you've got battery life. So at the bottom, you can actually start or end your ride just by clicking the middle button here. And similar to smartphones, all you have to do is just swipe down to open up quick settings. It's not easy to do with gloves on, I will mention that, but once they're off, the touch screen is actually plenty responsive. So from there, you can actually adjust the backlight, toggle darker light mode, disable touch screen when it's raining or you're dripping sweat, or you can also manage sounds and all other preferences. So swiping sideways brings up the sensor page where you can actually configure things like the Wahoo Tracker radar, which I've been using over the last 5 months as well, and I really like it. Another swipe over gets you back to kind of the main setup page, routes, workouts, activity history. And then the last page is notifications, where you can see your notifications. Personally, I turn all of my notifications off in the app. I don't want to be bothered when I'm on the bike. That's my time to disconnect. So overall, I think the usability is really solid. It's simple enough for riders who want a no-fuss experience, but also offers, I'd say, enough customization for folks who really like to kind of tweak data fields and settings. So comparing it to other devices, it still feels very clean and approachable, even if it does take a little bit of adjustment, especially if you are coming from, say, an older Roam or Bolt. That all said, the device isn't perfect. It's already had a few kind of firmware updates, which is what you would expect from a brand like Wahoo, which have certainly helped smooth things out, but it has glitched on me multiple occasions. Maybe 1 out of 20 times it won't boot up properly unless I actually hard reset it or actually just plug it into the charger. So that's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely not ideal if you're short on time and want to get out the door real quick. All right, so now getting into the Wahoo app. It's another way to customize the device, obviously. But what I like is that you can do almost everything directly on the head unit itself, at least the simple tasks. That said, if you do want to dive deeper, things like customizing data fields or adjusting more advanced settings, you do need the app to do that. This is also where you can pair other Wahoo devices like that tracker, radar, or update firmware. Although I actually just the other day updated the firmware directly on the device itself. So the app also connects to third-party platforms like, say, Ride with GPS and Strava and plenty of others, which makes syncing routes and rides actually really seamless. All right, so for example, if I build a route on or in Ride with GPS and save it, I just need to sync routes on my device and, well, it automatically shows up. So on the flip side of things, once I actually finish a ride, the app pushes my rides straight to those paired platforms. I guess one thing that kind of tripped me up at first, I had to toggle on the auto share button in the app. Until I figured that out, my rides weren't actually updating to Strava or Ride with GPS automatically, but once I turned it on, everything works smoothly. So the app itself pulls everything into one place. You can actually find your recent activities, suggested workouts or routes, and even suggested routes. They've got that now, which is interesting. And all of your Wahoo devices, whether that's new head units, sensors, or smart trainers. I do imagine older head units will also eventually be supported on the Wahoo app too. But as of yesterday, when I tried to pair an older Elemnt Roam to the app, it would not allow it. All right, let's get into what I think is the most important part of any head unit, battery life. So every feature matters in some way, shape, or form, right? But without power, the device is useless. Yeah. Wahoo actually claims up to 25 hours on the Roam 3. The key phrase is up to. So the device has a bigger rechargeable lithium-ion battery in this version versus the V2, which is obviously how they stretch that number from 17 hours to 25 hours. But in my testing, I never actually hit 25 hours. So with my phone paired, but no other sensors paired to the device, over 12 rides, I managed 22 hours, 39 minutes, and 35 seconds. I wasn't following a track, and I had auto backlight on, and the touchscreen was enabled, so it basically was bare bones. Still, not bad, but not 25 hours. Then I began testing it in various other situations, such as following a route, which did shave off a little battery a little bit faster. But the bigger drain came from pairing sensors, especially the tracker radar. So on busy roads, I could literally watch the battery percentage trickle down faster. With the radar paired for most of my rides and following the route about half the time, I averaged just over 17 hours. So not great, still better than some other head units I've tested recently, but not awesome. At one point, the unit actually died on me mid-ride, and I was actually a little worried about losing the ride. But once I actually charged it, it booted up and actually restored the ride without issue. It even started it again, leaving where it left off. All right, so for, I'd say, weekend bike packing trips, you could probably get by. It's manageable. It's not ideal, but manageable. The Coros Dura and Garmin's Edge 1040 Solar, they certainly give me a little bit more peace of mind, easily lasting multiple days without a recharge. So that's my most significant question mark with the Roam 3. It's hard not to imagine, say, Wahoo experimenting with supplementary solar panels or even going the Coros route with a separate solar integrated unit. I would love that. All right, so I hate to say it, but I do feel like the Roam 3 feels more like a day ride GPS or head unit device first, with just enough life for, say, short weekend trip. So a Friday afternoon, all day Saturday, and a Sunday morning or so. I think it would work fine. Just make sure to pack a power bank because you just never know what actually is going to drain your battery. It's just safe to have one. All right, so obviously navigation and routes, it certainly deserves its own section here. Tracking day rides and following a track for bike packing is honestly one of the only reasons I still use head units now that kind of my training days are behind me. But do we really need them with how good these watches have become. That's probably a topic for a future video. Actually, I know it is. Stay tuned for that. But I'm guessing most of you are in the same boat as me. You use it for your day rides, to track your rides, and then also to follow a route while bike packing. So the Roam 3 does bring some nice map upgrades from the V2. So the new color screen makes maps way more visually pleasing, and the addition of road names is genuinely useful here. All right, so that all said, the maps are still rather basic, and I'd absolutely love to see those topography lines kind of when you zoom a little bit closer in. With the touch screen, I certainly found myself scrolling and exploring the map a little bit more. I never did that with the V2 Bolt or Roam. And it was very easy and quick to kind of navigate around with the touch screen, or even these side buttons here, kind of zooming in and out. It's really, really crisp. So Wahoo recently released a firmware update promising increased contrast, improved color variance, and reduced visual clutter at a certain zoom level. So I actually have noticed some improvements here, especially riding in and out of sun and shade here in Colorado. But something I really like about the Roam 3's visual experience, and actually the 2 as well, is that matte finish compared to the Garmin 1040 or the Hammerhead Karoo, which both have that kind of glossier screen that can be harder to see. The Roam's display holds up really well in bright or semi-bright sunny conditions, like I usually get here in Colorado. However, when it becomes a little bit more cloudy, the screen certainly loses some of its crispness and becomes harder to read. So the Roam 3 also supports map layers. I rarely toggle them on or off. They're always usually on, but they did add bike lane data recently, which is a nice option if you are kind of navigating through town and want kind of the safest line there. And if you want to change those layers, you can just tap on the layer button on the map, and then the options kind of pop up. You can toggle them on or off by just clicking them. Following a route is also really straightforward. So from the home screen, I just head to routes, click on routes right there, which pulls in my ride with GPS and Strava routes. You can search with the magnifying glass at the top right there, or sort through them with a filter. Once you load a route, chevrons basically show up directing you in the right direction. Those chevrons do change colors, green, yellow, or red, to show the grade of the climb. So you can also pull up turn-by-turn prompts, which also shows remaining mileage and total climbing by tapping the line above the map layers. So overall, the route following is really, I'd say, a great experience. And I just recently added the elevation profile on the bottom of the map, and that basically gives me everything I need. Just one page for a full day of riding or bike packing. And if you just need to get to a destination, the unit also does a solid job. You can actually share a location from Google Maps or Apple Maps to the Wahoo app, and it will create a route. You can also route to a saved location or tap a spot directly on the map from the head unit. You even get the option to choose your preferred surface in that particular setting, paved, mixed, or unpaved. And as far as the reroute functionality goes, I actually think it does a pretty good job. So just riding around town on a route and going off route, it does a really, really good job of finding a different or an alternative. And in the backcountry too, obviously there's less options, but every single time I had a reroute on a pretty known trail system, it did a pretty good job. But you still do need to be a little bit careful with the reroute functionality. But overall, I've been pretty happy with its overall use, even though I generally hate rerouting on my head unit. Most of the time, I will pull out my phone or zoom way in on the GPS first before fully trusting it. One feature I really like, though, is that all of the routes that you follow on the Roam 3, you can actually cancel it at any time and start a new route without actually having to end your ride. Big bonus there. Talking about some other notable features here. So starting with the summit segment feature. So climbing features like this have kind of been around on plenty of head units over the years, but the execution with the Wahoo Elemnt Roam is really well done and feels very accurate. So when you're just riding along or following a route, the Roam 3 kind of detects a climb and automatically switches to the summit page. As you hit the base, it kind of zooms in and gives you a full breakdown, the grade, length, elevation, a profile. I really like this because it actually clearly shows the profile, and honestly, it motivates me to kind of push a little bit harder. The ex-racer in me still uses this as kind of a carrot from time to time to burn off some steam. Really like it. Speaking of the tracker radar, when it is paired, the Roam 3 shows cars creeping up on the left side of the display. It can display multiple vehicles at once, which is nice, and the indicator stripe changes from orange to red depending on the speed. And if a car is pulling a trailer, it actually shows two icons kind of stacked on top of each other, which is my cue to move over even further. I mean, bottom line, I absolutely hate riding with cars. I wouldn't do it if someone paid me, but when I have to be on pavement, I absolutely love the Wahoo Tracker radar, which also comes with USB-C charging, which, yeah, it's an upgrade from their competitor. All right, so the Roam 3 also adds controls to manage Spotify or Apple Music, radar, lights, and even a GoPro directly on the device, which is kind of neat. I know some people will absolutely appreciate this if they don't like a song in their earbuds. Hit skip without having to take your phone out. That's kind of nice. You can also set up custom alerts, which could be handy on something like the Colorado Trail where you're sleep deprived or something, or hungry. You can set up reminders to eat, or better yet, tell you to go to sleep. Novel idea. And of course, the Roam covers all of the training features that you'd expect. I'm not going to dive into them here. Shane and DC Rainmaker already have really great videos on that. But the takeaway here is, well, pros and I guess amateurs alike use these devices for training rides and race day to track power, cadence, heart rate, so on. So yeah, I guess the Roam 3 definitely isn't going to hold you back in that department. Briefly on durability here. So the device has been through plenty of rain lately. And in those conditions, I actually do have to turn off the touch screen since it kind of starts to act up when rain kind of sits on the top. Otherwise, it's been really solid in the elements. And on the older Roam V1 that I've had, I've actually, I think I've had two of them have sunspots that kind of show up on the screen after sitting in the sun for a long period of time. So far, I've not had any issues with the V3, even with a lot of direct sunlight this year. Wahoo's short but impactful run in the head unit world continues with this Roam 3. And while some of you certainly might not love kind of that big UI change or the removal of the LED lights, I do think Wahoo did a solid job of actually staying relevant while still keeping things simple. It's not as stunning as the Hammerhead Karoo, but it's much more elegant than the Coros Dura. And after a few of the firmware updates, I actually feel like it is tuned pretty good for everyday use. So the bump in battery life is welcome, but the device is also much more powerful, which means the capacity had to grow just to keep up. And the real question here is whether that's enough for us bike packers. Obviously, it depends on who you are and how long you ride and what your bike packing trips look like. But for me, I find myself charging it more often than I'd actually like. That's where I kind of start to lean towards devices with solar charging or more efficient power use. And I do hope that's on Wahoo's to-do list for future units. I've said this before, and I still haven't seen it from them. Maybe I never will. That said, the Roam 3 is easy to navigate. Routes are intuitive to follow. The Summit Climb feature adds a nice visual touch, and it's quick to process commands, unlike some other head units that I actually have tested recently. And now that I've turned on all of my devices again for the first time since the Coros review last year, kind of side by side, I'm actually really impressed with the overall capability and visuals. But at $465 USD, it's still a big spend for a head unit. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. What do you all think about the new Wahoo Elemnt Roam 3? Let me know in the comment section below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. And if you like what you saw in this video, and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And if you want to help support everything we're doing on this YouTube channel, everything at bikepacking.com, you can do so by joining the Bikepacking Collective. So the Collective offers a lot of awesome perks, including the all-new Base Camp industry discounts, monthly giveaways, and of course the twice yearly bikepacking journal. So to learn a little bit more about the Bikepacking Collective or just to join, you can click on the card in the top right corner or follow the link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, pedal further.